to see more men here. So,
because this is a different program, you know.
I'm very happy about it. That was
Yeah.
something I was looking forward to.
Yeah, the intent is also that to make sure that we have more of their participation, because it's not nothing about us without us is what is the point.
No, we want it both ways. In the
Yeah.
Coffee Connect, where women are projected, more men should participate, and here more women should participate.
So it's a wonderful initiative to start at the right time, and I'm so happy about it that it all came together. So,
Mr. Ravi, we can wait for a couple of more minutes. No problem.
I am okay.
Shubhashri, you are all right? Fine with that?
I'm okay.
Okay.
in fact, we have quite a
Closing time is hard-coded, does not matter.
yeah. Yes, but it's quite. I mean, there is enough time. 1.5 hours is good time. No issue. It's reasonably good time. So there's no hurry to, push anything. There isn't a big set of 4 or 5 panelists. It's only you in conversation. So it's neat and comfortable. In fact, there was one more program today, which is organized for this Men's Day. I'm seeing more of these programs being organized. Or is it that?
I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
Yes, there's one more. I'll tell you which one today. It's at 3 o'clock because one of my colleagues from Avatar, it is Hitachi India region. They are presenting on International Men's Day, men advocating for real impact of DEI in business. So my colleague is addressing, he's coordinating the panel. That's how I came to know. And I'm happy about it that that's being celebrated. Although the core reason for this is very different, but still I'm happy that all organizations are leveraging this to, either express gratitude or bring them also into the fold, which is very good.
Happy to see Mr. G.V. Raman, sir.
Namaskara, sir.
After a long time. You are muted, sir.
He is the reason why I'm in this group. He introduced me to this group.
He's muted.
He's the one who shared this profile thing of WSPC to me and said that I should.
Sir, G.V. Raman, sir?
Yeah.
You are able to hear us, right?
Yeah.
Namaskara, sir.
Namaskaram.
So we are already at 4:02. So
you can start, Bhavani. I think let people join us. Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, friends, senior members of the WBC, all other members and invitees of the chamber. It's wonderful to gather here to celebrate the International Men's Day, which is on November 19th, 2023, which was yesterday, where the initiative was that we should pledge to honor the men in every stage of life, standing strong as a support system for us and making sure that we do not stumble or fall. We celebrate your resilience, your leadership, and your kindness today and every day. And we are happy to have you all by starting this wonderful initiative. And I welcome Subhashri Sriram, Joint Managing Director of Sriram Capital Private Limited, to converse with Sri Ravi Raman, Global Delivery Head, State Street HCL Services Private Limited today. The WBC was set up, the Women's Business Council was set up in March 2021 with a vision aiming to promote gender acceleration and building inclusive culture in the business environment and promoting male allyship in business by encouraging their participation. We have various initiatives which are hosted through webinars, panel discussions, and connects with leaders. But the one which was important was to recognize the contribution of men in gender acceleration. We believe by starting this initiative today on Partners in Progress, we would be able to promote advocacy of our vision of gender acceleration and the promotion of inclusive culture. Our series, Partners in Progress, would have periodic programs centering around men as advocates and their role in promoting women. This is the first of this series, which we are launching proudly today. We drew our inspiration from various global initiatives recognizing men as partners in progress. For example, the One Earth Foundation, based in Broomfield, Colorado, on a project, One Secure Future, it launched the Partners in Progress as an advocacy initiative to promote women, peace, and security. We also got inspired from many corporates which are recognizing male allies and organizations which are aimed at promoting women, like Avatar, which has instituted a Male Ally Award on an annual basis. In a HBR study, men have been recognized as male champions who genuinely believe in the fairness of gender equity and talent development. They play a critical role in advancing women's careers. They use their authority to push the workplace culture towards gender equality. And they are effective sponsors who have the voice of women at the table. Without their avid support, who are the most powerful stakeholders in larger corporations and larger ecosystems, significant progress on ending gender disparity is highly unlikely. It is important that all of us realize that the voice of men, nothing about us without us. And to take this forward, we start our initiative today on Partners in Progress, the first conversation between Ravi Raman and Subhashree. And I take pleasure in introducing them to you formally. Mr. Ravi is a mechanical engineer from IIT and a postgraduate from IIM Calcutta and the National Law School, India University, Bengaluru, amongst others. And he has over 30 years of experience in banking, finance, and insurance sectors. He's currently the global delivery head at State Street HCL. He's the founder member of the managed accounts platform InfraHedge, which ranked as the largest platform for providing global institutional investors services. It won the Michael Porter Prize in 2018. Ravi is also a member of the Board of Studies for the Commerce faculty at Christ University, and he is also a member of the advisory board of the Chartered Securities and Investments Institute, UK, a member of the executive committee of the India chapter of the Chartered Alternate Investments Association, US. Ravi is a regular speaker in the areas of risk management and assurance in India, UK, and Sri Lanka. On behalf of the Chamber and my co-chair and my secretary of the Chamber, we have great pleasure in welcoming you, Ravi, to this program. It's my pleasure to introduce my friend and the person who is going to anchor this conversation, Subhashree Sriram, who has more than 3 decades of professional experience, of which 24 years with Sriram Group's financial services business. She has held the position of a chief finance officer of the listed entities over 18 years. She is presently the joint managing director at Sriram Capital Private Limited. She is a fellow member of the Institute of Cost and Management Accountants of India, a fellow member of the Institute of Company Secretaries of India, a postgraduate diploma in systems management, and she also holds a postgraduate diploma in cyber laws. She has won the best performing CFO in the NBFC sector for 2013 at the 8th edition of the awards instituted by a leading business television channel, CNBC TV 18. In 2016, she was chosen as one of the most influential CFOs in India by CIMA, one of the 5 top contenders of the Financial Leader of the Year category, a part of the prestigious ET Prime Women Leadership Awards in 2023. Welcome, Subhashree. It's wonderful to have you here. And over to you to start the conversation, the most interestingly awaited conversation with Ravi.
Thank you, Bhavani. Welcome, Ravi. I should say this conversation with Ravi started off 2 weeks back on Saturday. I today think of it, I should feel guilty disturbing on a Saturday afternoon, but he was kind enough to take my call and we discussed at length. And I think while discussing with him, I realized that I just can't miss having him in this forum. And whatever I heard from him, I thought everyone should get an opportunity to listen to him. Thank you again, Ravi. What Bhavani mentioned about International Women's Day, this has been my last several decades fond hope that one day I will get to celebrate the International Men's Day. Every time March 8th, International Women's Day, and I get called to speak in some forum, I'd always feel that why aren't we celebrating Men's Day? We are not something to be not having a Rangoli party, kitty party, dance, but what we do beyond that in this International Women's Day. And every forum I attended, I used to say, please remember to celebrate International Men's Day. Thank you, MCCI. I think you have taken this up, one of my big bucket list of things you helped me sort it out. And one wise man, I don't want to name in this forum, but he mentioned that when I mentioned this to him and I said, why aren't we celebrating? He said, men don't know how to celebrate. You women have to help them celebrate. So here we are here from WBC to celebrate the International Men's Day. Now, coming back to the topic, partners in progress. This again, I will leave to Ravi to elaborate, but it was a very interesting point, which it sort of struck me, is that if you want gender equality, you want gender parity, you want a very conducive workplace, it is not just enough, but what you do as women in workplace, but how do you communicate to the men about what you need and explain to them? And actually, Ravi, I know at the end of today's session, we might have a Stockholm syndrome. We'll all sympathize with the men. I hope it doesn't turn out that way. But we may end up having a Stockholm syndrome saying, oh, poor men, they don't know how to deal with it. And we are the superior category. And therefore, we need to be very condescending and looking at the men and their challenges to deal with women in the workplace. I think, first and foremost, that is something which I want to Ravi to ask. What does he think about gender parity? What does he think about women in workplace? And where are we? And I know that you've been in the NASSCOM Diversity Forum for a very long time. So I want to know from you how it has been your journey in this space and where are we headed? I'd like to hear from you, Ravi.
Thanks, Subhashri, and I've heard a lot about you, and so it's a privilege to be in this forum and to be speaking. And it's going to be less about speaking and more about sharing experiences. Okay? And the first thing that I want to say is about all these Men's Day, Women's Day, Day for the Aged, Day for the Young, Day for the Millennials, Day for all these days. It's very easy to take it light because every day you have a day, right? I mean, so one day it is the World Diabetes Day about a week back, and on and on. Okay. What makes these days special is the fact that people remember and take a little amount of time to think about their respective groups. Why do we celebrate a birthday? I mean, imagine celebrating a birthday where I celebrate my birthday today in my room because it is me, right? It's not going to be worth it. It is just the fact that folks around you remember of you fondly, talk to you, call you, and that is what makes the birthday great. Then why should the Women's Day be celebrated by women without men around? Or why should Men's Day be celebrated by men without the women around? I'm not even wanting women to be on the Men's Day panel to tell men how to celebrate a Men's Day. I want women because that is celebration in true sense. So every celebration comes from partnership and togetherness And that's how all of these days should be thought of. If I have a World Disability Day, and if it is going to be only people who are disabled who are going to celebrate that day, God bless the day. It is people like us, most of us at least, who believe we are able-bodied, have to put ourselves in the shoe of the people who are disabled to figure out what it takes to be inclusive. And so the Men's Day is not a day for the men to celebrate amongst themselves, which many weekends tend to be the celebration for most of us. And then we possibly talk about what went on for the Sunday. So Saturday is done, Sunday is gone, and then suddenly Monday creeps in. So that's not what a Men's Day is about. Let me come back to specifically what is the role of men and women in building great workplaces that we are going to be successful about. I mean, with Bhavani from Avatar here, I've heard a lot from Avatar, and so some of it might be a repetition for you, Bhavani. But what is very, very important is that the inclusion starts with inclusive conduct. It's not about numbers, it's not about how many, it's about, do you have space in your mind to put yourself in the shoe of the other person and feel proud that you have been inclusive and not about accommodating somebody. You don't have to be sympathetic to men on a Men's Day or the vice versa. You don't have to be sympathetic to women and help them. It is about taking pride that you have a reflection of a society which believes in inclusion. And when I say this, I want to anecdotally talk about my own journey into gender inclusion. 2007, Leela in Bangalore, there was a workshop, there was a seminar as they call it, for all the women on how to make the IT industry inclusive. I was one of the people who participated because the topic interested me. So I went there, I subscribed, I went in. A room full of 600 people, and there were only 5 men in that. And of course, every speaker was a woman, and they were all in the podium talking about why these men don't allow us to succeed, they don't give us space to succeed, why these men are not inclusive. Date is important, 2007. Okay. And I just told the organizer saying, hey, I'm here, I'm one of the 5 participants over here. I mean, I didn't tell them I took the courage to come here. Of course, I hesitated. Okay, when I went into the room, I hesitated because the room full of people talking, and who am I? And am I really welcome? I told them I want to speak, and I just went onto the podium and said, whatever you said is brilliant. I wish you were speaking to men because you were talking to them. And there were no men in the audience other than the 5 of us. So it's very important to be inclusive, even in this journey of including women. It's a funny anecdote and funny story that in the next year when we organized the summit in the same place, 2008 in Leela, of course, we made it a point to give a message that in the first floor, the men's room will be blocked and made as women's room, just to make the men realize how difficult is it to be not in the mind space of the men and the society that organizes it. Today, to think about a men's room or a women's room, as the case may be, is something that is commonplace. But 2008, when we converted that men's room into a ladies' room, was an important message to tell that it's not just because the men want to keep the women away that they behave the way they behave. They are trained to be so by the patriarchy, that has been there for hundreds of years. So it's a patriarchy in me, patriarchy in each one of us in this audience that comes in the way of an inclusive life. So I want to talk about patriarchy later. I want to talk about inclusion later. But this is my opening remark to say that inclusion cannot happen through exclusions. Vashi.
Shafi, it's so it's like reading my mind. It's like this is something which all my 30 years I've had this thing about women in workflows, irrespective of where you are, in which is an immediate mindset response from the male colleagues or even women. Actually, I wouldn't blame the men. It's anyone. Is that you are either a secretarial person or a PA to someone, and never would they consider that you would be on your own and be actually a manager or have a manning responsibility. Now, in this, I recall during the COVID times, when I think all of us had some more time than we had otherwise, is to listening to this podcast of this book on invisible women. And you can see the number of data and statistics. It's a mind-boggling statistical thing of data. And some of these, which always bothered me, is this hundreds of years of patriarchy, is that you have a doctor, then you have a lady doctor. It's almost assumed the doctor is only a male doctor. Everything is, okay, today we have a chairman and chairperson is now being accepted. Otherwise, you would never be able to get called as, even many women chairpersons have been called chairwomen, have been called as chairman because want of an alternative. So many professions, including is one of the data which was mentioned in that book, is about how air conditioning in centralized air conditioning offices are kept at a temperature point which is more suitable for men and not for women, because we have an ability to do it. Here I have Bhavani very thrilled about it. I know many of my colleagues, women, would carry shawls and things to come to office, because the minute they go and switch off the AC, somebody will switch it on the other side, and there's a fight going on for these AC setting. So these are some of things which I have seen, but I'm just wondering, Ravi, what is it more can we do? Both from, and I see very happy to see, as I said, like quite a bit of men here as well, because I think at least from 2007 to today, 2023, Ravi, at least one objective has been achieved. You're having a forum, started inviting from WBC, but we are able to get more men to participate in it. I think that's a great achievement or a journey we have traveled till date. But what do you suggest more we should do, both from the men and women, generally to make it more comfortable? What is it we specifically we could do, many things which we could do?
You gave the example of women being stenographers, right? And similarly, women being nurses. It's a natural image for all of us. And what it does to all of us is that it becomes the norm. And so it manifests in multiple dimensions. And one of the languages that we use in all of these gender conversations is that we call this as an unconscious bias. Right? And these unconscious biases cannot be overcome by accusations. If I choose to behave in a particular manner, the fallacy of that particular assumption that is behind that conversation has to be called out, and it's not about me. Okay? If I try to be nice and polite, or that's what I believe, and tell my female colleague, don't you have to go home? It's late. You need to feel safe. The immediate reaction from someone like Subhashi is to say, none of your business. And it starts with an assumption that there is malaise here. It's just not malaise. It is just how you are brought up. I come from a day and era that it's so inferior of me. When I was in school, I used to think that it's inferior of me to be a pillion to a women rider as a man. In my 10th standard, I was told to write a copybook. In 10th standard, who writes a copybook? But I was told that my handwriting is bad. I didn't feel hurt because I was told to write a copybook. But I was told to write a copybook where the first sentence is written by a girl in my class. Her handwriting is good, but why couldn't they have chosen a boy to write the first line, but this girl? And so every day I have to go and stand in front of her. I mean, it's a different story. She ended up to be the state rank holder and in the 10th standard. A great friend of mine. But what I'm actually saying is each of us, and I'm giving my own example, is because are conditioned by the society we are in. So the first thing that we need to do to be inclusive is to allow somebody to make this mistake of not being inclusive, but correct him in private, not in public. That's just one part of it. And this is not only to men, it happens to women. Women equally think that, oh, I need to go home early because I need to feel safe. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a choice people make. And there are other women who say, no, I will fend for myself and I'll live my life. It's okay for me. So speaking up is important. Listening is important. So a space where you can speak up is when you have an inclusive workplace. And so inclusive workplace is more important than a diverse workplace. If you're going to have a room full of women who have a preconceived notion on how women should behave, ought to behave, I don't think it's an inclusive place. It's not going to be a place conducive for women at all. And so make the places inclusive, make the minds inclusive is essentially the secret to success. Subhashri.
So just to expand or see what you said is like, it's a very interesting point you said. It's not the question of how many are there, but how comfortable are there, how participative are there. It is not just a statistical number of 40% women, 30% women, but they still are not part of the mainstream of the business. But if I have to take that, how do you deal with the stereotype of work that women are expected to do? Now, that itself sorts of restricts or limits women into the space where they can operate. Now, unless you are willing to take the risk, if I may call the risk, is to encourage women in a not so traditional again, is work areas. How do you start doing that? Because it's not a question of women not willing to do, women getting prepared to do it, from their family being participative in the journey of women, equipping themselves to get into that space of work, and men in the other end being willing to experiment women in that role. Now and this is something which I always used to say, that all that I can talk about, all this posh women, gender equality, but there is somebody who is driving the P&L of the company. And that person has got a shareholder value, and the shareholder does not ask, how did you get the money? But the money has to be made. Now, how can I achieve both? Well, of late, I've been hearing about statistics about companies with more women make a better profitability, company with more women on the board make higher profitability, because are backed by facts and which are substantial, or is there a science behind it? What are your thoughts on this?
I think you touched on two core topics. Okay. First one is this whole designation of these are men's role, these are women's role, and things like that. Okay. For that designation to go, we need role models. And which is where diversity and affirmative action comes into question. So you do create roles where we say, hey, I need a woman in this role. And it's not a great and a flattering thing for a woman to be told that she came to that role because she is a woman. Most organizations, and in fact, you would be very familiar, Subhashri, how many headhunters have called you and said, hey, somebody is looking for a woman CFO, come over.
Board seat.
And I'm sure you and I know my wife
Reject.
will not respond to that call.
Very true.
Okay.
Right.
But at the same time, by us trying to do that again and again in most companies, and a lot of corporates do that. So they mistake diversity to be an inclusive conduct. Diversity is not. Without inclusion, diversity is meaningless. And so what actually happens is this whole stereotyping of this role is meant for one group of people as against the other is where the whole problem starts. And that comes with age-old patriarchy, age-old way of living. And role models change. So if you want to have diversity in your company, try and have a receptionist who is a male. Very important. No, it sounds, a lot of people say, oh, we have diversity, we have 60% of entry-level folks are women. I said, that's not diversity. You bring 60% of entry-level women as women, and then you celebrate the fact that your company average is 46, and you say you are a great inclusive company, only to note that in a whole room full of senior executives, you don't even have one woman. So it's very important for us to be inclusive in every piece of conversation, and not just at workplace, at home. One of the things that I keep telling women executives in my office is that you don't come and tell me you're getting married, so you want to leave your job. I keep telling them, you at least keep your job for 3 months after your marriage, because the first 3 months of your marriage is when you will find yourself in a very difficult spot, because you're going to be in a place away from your natural home. Again, you are going to, all of this is preconception of patriarchy, keep that away. And so it's very important for you to at least go out and breathe. You will have a nice family. You will choose to be there in that family is okay. But till it becomes a choice, you need to have the choice. So the point that I'm making is inclusion is not only about what the managers do, what the leaders do, what the companies do, what the policies do. It's about how do we create opportunities to remind ourselves to be inclusive. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is, you spoke about what about environment where we have more women? Should we look for more women? How do we bring more women into the workplace? And for this, I typically have a model saying, as a company, if you are having lesser number of, in this example, women than the industry, you need to look inwards. You need to look inwards. Why is it that you are not able to attract women? But otherwise, don't take the shortcut of saying this role is for women. Take the long haul by hiring, grooming, working with the industry, working with the supply chain, of creating an environment where you can build an inclusive company. Which is why, I like the work that Avtar is doing. Avtar is not just working with the companies and talking to the companies about how they should be inclusive. They also work with society, work with schools, work with colleges. It's as important. You create a supply chain which works. 20 years back, if you are a woman and if you are a finance executive, you can be an accounts assistant, but you cannot be a CFO. You cannot be a finance head because it's stressful work and a woman cannot do it. It's not true anymore. In fact, if at all anyone buckles, it might be me. And so it's so important for us to work not just within our own company, but across. So meeting people in forums like this, going to schools, and most importantly, at households, make sure that you have enough role models.
I can't agree more, Ravi. 30 years ago, when I would walk into a public sector bank to meet a manager, AGM, DGM, and I would have a colleague with me to come with me, one of my juniors. But 90% of the time, 9 out of 10 times, the bank manager will speak to the colleague and not to me. It was almost felt that
Yeah.
he is the boss and not me, and he would continue the entire conversation. I would in the how much I could tell him that I am the boss here and I am taking the decision. But I mean, I have no offense to public sector, private sector. Those days there were only more public sector than private sector banks. So I unfortunately had the experience of dealing with a few public sector banks. I know how it felt like. It was a stereotype of positions, and if it was a boss, it was always a male, and therefore it doesn't matter what otherwise. You talked about starting at home and having the right role model at the home. But if you look at it, I mean, jokingly or otherwise, in every household, it's always called the mother who's calling the shots. I mean, well, all things being it is a mother who's calling the shots most often. Whether it is depending on how important the decision is, but mother is the person who is sort of keeping the thing going, keeping the house. There's a fantastic leadership position which is exhibited time and again by the mother in the house, the lady in the house, to the children. But it is probably the media, the books, the external world, which sort of reflects back as a child is at a growing age, comes back to believe that this is all you could do, or this is what you are entitled to do, and everything else is a struggle. Now, to the extent like what you mentioned, like what you said about board positions of women, yes, I always until now I've stayed away from those openings where they say you come in as a women director. I said you find someone else, I'll come in as a subject matter expert. If you don't need a subject matter expert, then I'm not there for it. But then I think back, like some quota systems, you need some of those, is to at least get a foothold entry into the space. Now, considering that there are certain restrictions and limitations, don't you think you need certain minimum criteria? Well, they may be looking at ornamental, they may be numbers, but do you believe you need those numbers in the initial stage? In some industries, more than others, to get that level of, we are maybe at the baby steps, we are the first, second, third steps, we are not yet evolved. Should we still think of those as a minimum hygiene factors?
Okay, we are actually drifting into a totally different topic, which is about affirmative action, but I won't duck it and I will come over here, okay? It is all about why you do it and what you do it. An affirmative action is almost like a steroid. And a steroid is required for a particular illness. When the society has an illness, you need an affirmative action to remediate it. But if that steroid becomes the only way to live, then it is going to impact on the health of the body. And that's essentially how you need to look at it. So, do you need roles where you need immediate action to make sure that there is adequate amount of diversity and adequate amount of inclusion? Answer is yes. But the way to do it is not using the steroids, but looking at the way of building immunity that you do for your body. So go work with schools, work with colleges, groom people, build leadership pipeline within your own organization, and exchange leadership across organizations and build that ecosystem. So the inclusive journey is something that is not just about meeting the numbers by hiring for positions. It's about working on a longer term. But of course, you can always say that, oh, longer term will take 50 years. And so I'm not going to do anything about it. That's not going to be possible. And that is where these sort of affirmative action program works. But we need to know that the steroid hurts the body, and the same way affirmative action hurts the organization is something which we must be conscious of and still pursue it because it's the only way we can accelerate a change.
Okay, when we go into
Ramesh?
schools, so when you're saying when it's going to schools and colleges, I'm assuming, and as I hear from you from the earlier part, it is not just to the girls, but as much as to the boys in their school and college days, and educate them about how to work with women at par, and how do they handle a women colleague and women boss willingly and more happily. That's the most desirable position to be. How do you think that today, is there a topic ready today? Is the colleges, are they ready to even listen to about? I know a lot of girls' schools, colleges talk about this, but I haven't heard of any boys actually or their education institutions talk about this. Is that already in prevalent, or are you suggesting we should do it?
Forget educational institutions, Subhashri. Households, in how many households do we insist that the male child partake household responsibilities? In how many households do we allow a child to come with a perception that household work is for women? So let us look at it inward. So when I said go to schools, that's what I meant at that age. Okay, and which is also very important, right? I mean, one of the things, I mean, again, this is something which is going to border around controversial, but I will still attempt it, is how many of us talk ill of a woman who takes work as a priority and says, hey, today my work is going to stretch. I'm going to stay back and I'm going to work longer hours. And my husband will take care of it, or somebody else at home will take care of my child, is considered to be a statement about the woman. Whereas if a male does it, he's a dedicated professional. And this is patriarchy in our mind. And to correct it is very important for us to change the behavior, for the man in the house to be able to say that the woman's job is as important as the man's job. The reason why I said this is controversial is because I don't necessarily believe professional work is the only way for each of us to achieve success. Just as much as a man wanting to do caregiving is unable to do caregiving is as much of a disservice as a woman who wants to take up a profession and unable to take a profession because of the circumstances. In fact, caregiving rights, caregiving opportunities is taken away from men because of the patriarchy. And so, when I say go to schools, of course you have to speak to the boys and tell the boys that there are successful women who fly aircrafts in which you fly. Hey Ravi, you thought it is below your dignity to be on a pillion of a motorcycle, your aircraft is being flown by a woman.
Totally.
If somebody had told me when I was in my 6th standard and 7th standard, I would never even have had to do a journey to discover that I was wrong. And so as we never speak to women, we never speak to girls, we never speak to boys. We have to speak to our society. And that's essentially what I'm saying.
Yeah, you're like, I can add to this, like, if we are talking to boys, and I think you mentioned it, I think I should bring it here, how biased we are, that in another context I'm saying, is if family women are taking more importance to their work, and the women family looks at it as if it is a disservice to the family, and the woman is being very selfish. The one I've seen very common is upbringing of children. It's almost something, it is, especially a child's education is somehow it is labeled as a woman's responsibility, and the child does not do well or happens to have a setback in its school education for a short period. It is almost blamed that women not being at home is the reason for all that thing which happened at there, and she is very selfish and she should have to sacrifice her work to make her child go up and study. Now, this is a very often, I have my colleagues who quit jobs. There's a very common thing which I've had my colleagues quit job or take a break is my child in standard 10 and standard 12, therefore I'm taking a break. I've never had my male colleague say this to me, and I'm just wondering today, hearing from you, why was this, are we pre-designed in our mind that this is our role, and therefore, or is it the economic status which is driving all of this and not the long-term women's empowerment?
Good. For both, you spoke about two things actually, okay? One thing is what is called as guilt. And for whatever reason, the patriarchy across all of us has constructed more guilt into women than into men. Let me elaborate this a little, okay? And the guilt is established by expecting the women to be better than the men. They are better caregivers. They are better at multitasking. I mean, we have invented ways of making women feel guilty even at workplace. They are good at multitasking. They can do certain tasks very well. They have higher degrees of integrity, whatever it is. I mean, okay, all in the name of nobility, you feed into a sense of guilt. And the classic illustration is when my house is unclean and my mother-in-law comes to clean the place, immediately and promptly my wife will get up and start helping her. And when my house is not clean and when my mother-in-law comes and says, "Hey Ravi, why have you kept this house like this and I want to rearrange it?" I have no hesitation in telling that if you want it to be clean, you can do that. I will do when I want to do. And this is patriarchy. And so guilt is a separate topic and which has been a big entitlement for women. And that guilt is something that makes life difficult for women. Keep that aside. And that translates into workplace, of course. The second aspect of it is also about work. And what does work mean? Work is not just making money. Work is fulfilling your own ability, choice, growth, willingness, and things like that. So it's a choice. The fact that work is a choice is also dropped in all our lexicon. And which is why we are so prompt to judge a woman who thinks work is important as less important than a man. The man also goes through that. He decides to take a drop year in 1 year to take care of his son or daughter. I can tell you the man will not sail through the next interview. If he takes a break, he will not. Whereas a woman can take a break and say, it was because of my mother-in-law. She can say it was because of my daughter, I took it. So it plays both ways. And so I'm here not saying women go through more than men, and not on a Men's Day, of course. But what I'm saying is, it is just the patriarchy which is playing, which is what comes back to our unconscious bias as a starting theme. And so all of us automatically start behaving in a particular manner where caregiving belongs to one group of people, breadwinning is that for another. And that is something we need to be conscious of. I'm not saying it is wrong. I'm not saying it is right. I'm saying it is coming in the way of free choice. And it comes in the way of choice of women who have an opportunity and still they say, what will the world say? And of course, I keep saying, whatever the world say, they won't come to your help when you need it. So keep that aside. So it's very important for us to know about our own biases, Subhashri. You should know your biases, it still is there. And if you say you don't, I think you are going to be in trouble.
No, my daughter doesn't remind me to any day to tell me how biased I am. Though in spite of all my thing, there are natural biases. But I can recall what you said almost maybe 20 years ago or 18 years ago. I had a call one day from, I was in office from my son's school saying that he had fallen off. He was playing something and he had fallen off and most likely had a fracture. When I got this call, and mind you, the school was 3 buildings away from my office. So, but I was in the midst of some meeting. So I called my husband and said, can you please take care of it? Then there was a question saying, how can you be so heartless? Your son has had a fall and you're not going. I said, he's a 10-year-old boy or 8-9-year-old boy. I can't lift him and carry him, and he needs, it's not something else which I can walk him out to a hospital or doctor. He's fallen and he needs to be lifted right now. And we carry to the hospital. I think my husband is much better suited than me. All that I can go is cry along with him, but still I will need somebody to lift him up and keep him in a position which is not hurting him. But I recall many of my colleagues were shocked by and felt that I was a very heartless woman, which only added to the women boss being not very, I would say, soft or sentimental, as women, as when they get to the role of a boss, become very heartless or very demanding. So it just added to the whole flavor I was there, already being best out with. Now, coming back to, getting back to an actionable, I know we all have patriarch, the mindset, it's a grown up over the years, maybe the next 10, 20 years, it'll be less of it. But people who are in their 40s and 30s, let me not talk even the senior, there's still a lot of next 20 years of work life, 20, 30 years of work. And they already started with a bit of a handicap. Now, they are going to get the next generation entering the work field with a lot more independence and expectations than the current generation of 30s and 40s are going to be the bosses in future, not yet ready to give it. How do we address this? Because you're going to see this whole stress in the workplace. Because you had a generation who didn't ask for it, did not demand for it. Now there is a generation who is entering into the work with a lot more awareness and a demand for equality, or level, or I wouldn't even call equality, an acceptance as it is. Now, how do we address that? Because that is a different type of stress in work.
Okay. There are multiple things, okay? Now I'm getting into prescription. Okay, the first prescription is role models. You need to have more women pilots. For men not to say, women rider in front of me. It's so natural for you to say, oh, I thought so, right? I mean, when you are on the road and when you suddenly see somebody brake abruptly, and then your affirmation bias creeps in. And if that rider happens to be a woman, okay. So what is important is you need role models. You need role models who are a demonstration that this is not only for men or this is not only for women. So have a great male nurse who enjoys his job and who actually is successful, for you to have more men take up the nursing and caregiving as a role. Similarly, have more women CFOs like you succeed is a first step. So having role models. Second is make sure the role models when they address the next generation, are not dismissive. Oh, you know how much sacrifice I made? Even you have to make those sacrifices. Don't think it is easy. Is how typical role models behave. Whereas when they came up and when they reached there, they would have had, most likely, a male role model who would have said that, hey, I understand where you come from, and spend time with the person and made sure that they feel comfortable, they feel nice about this role being taken up, and work on the growth. I'm not here talking about patronizing you, but I'm saying being nice, being right, being polite, being firm. And so grooming role models is the next important thing. Don't be dismissive, but groom role models. And so that has to be done by everyone, the whole society, whole family, whole organizations, groom role models. If your son walks in and says, hey, he wants to take up nursing, don't be dismissive. Listen to him. If your daughter walks in and says she wants to be a truck driver, listen to him. Today, there are women in fields who work so very well. When I say fields, I didn't mean agriculturally. I'm saying, I met a very senior executive in ABB, took up field work of laying cables when she graduated out of her engineering college. So, create role models is point number one, and two is groom them is the second. Third, and the last one in this whole actionable is, after that success, don't attribute that success to the gender.
Interesting.
Because a lot of times we make that mistake. We go through all the journey and lose everything that we gain by then bringing the gender back where it doesn't belong. A woman succeeds because she is successful, not because she is a woman. A man succeeds because he's good at it and not because he's a man. And that's the place where this whole gender vanishes. And that's the place where we need to reach. And I will take the airline pilots as an example. Today, we don't even feel surprised that there is a woman who is commanding the flight. 20 years back, we would have said, hey, she is the first woman pilot in Indian Airlines or Air India. I think that's how this whole journey is going to happen. And so be patient for this is how I would say that we will reach a place which is included. Don't be in a hurry.
At least I can say, Ravi, that very proudly that in my batch of school, and my batchmate, one of them became a pilot. And she was not only was in a pilot in airlines and then Air Force, she also was in the private airlines. So it was an interesting that I can say 20, 30 years ago to have a pilot in my batch. So proudly say that. Now I think we are about.
And you have phenomenal accountants in your batch.
Yes, plenty of them. I have plenty of them. Plenty of them. Many of them are CFOs in many large institutions. I'm just mindful of time. I have another 20-25 minutes. Bhavani, would you suggest that we should open now to the questions, or do you want? I just want to be. I see Govind Nayagam has a lot of points to say. Should we?
There are questions in the chat box, Subhashri. You could address them and then maybe come back to wrap up the conversation. I think that should be.
I could, but should we give an option for Govind Nayagam Somasundaram to speak? He opened out, but I think he's got a lot of.
Yeah, the chat box comments also of his is there, so maybe
yes. Can he maybe I'll just give a.
Yeah, we will unmute him. Jaya, just unmute Mr. Gomati Nayagam.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
And after that, Shubha, you can address the other ones.
Yes, I will.
And then probably then open it for questions for the audience for live questions.
Yeah, but I see so many from. I thought it was just a fair to give him.
Mr. Gomati Nayagam.
Is he there?
I'm unable to see him, ma'am. I think he's not in
Yes,
the room.
I think we have
okay, I just know,
conversation.
Why don't you read it out,
Leave it.
Subhashi?
yeah, I
That will
will,
be
I
good.
will. Well, I think he made one point, very interesting point, and some of them are pretty in-depth into it. He is mentioning about Metro Water having a lot of recent article in newspaper about Metro Water Department having a lot of women on the a higher percentage of women in their workforce. When he also points out, the next discussion was, would they be in the top position? His question is, why are you even discussing it? Why is it a question mark to it? Why would you want to be surprised, or why would you want to be shocked to see that if you can have women on the workforce, then why are you surprised? Why could they be on the top? I think it's a very, the biases, the unconscious bias, or this is what I think Ravi alluded to, is what he's referring to in this one. And the other is, Mahati had a very important point, like what you talked about male nurses. I like the male nurse, well, like women pilot or lady doctor. I like this male nurse, but I think that again is a gender bias. Nurse need not be just a female nurse. Is talking about why Siri and Alexa why do they have female voices? Why can't they be male voices to it? If it's an assistant, if it is something as support, it is almost preconceived notion that it is the women on that role on that side of the table, working as an assistant and not the other way around. So there is a lot of male chauvinistic attitudes in families. So would they be the good role models?
Okay,
Ravi, what
I'll
do you
take
say?
this three.
Yeah.
I'll take these three before we jump to another. But
Yeah.
I'll start with the third, okay? Male chauvinism per se is something that as a terminology I would want to avoid, purely because it puts that whole class of people with the antenna up, out to fight. This is almost like, I mean, there are enough feminist literature where feminism is always equated to activist feminism, which is also not bad. But the point is, not all feminism is activism. Okay, the same thing with the male chauvinist. Okay, it has a negative connotation, and we can keep that away. It is. I would stop by saying it is a bias. It is a bias that we carry. Give me a minute. The auto switch off in my conference room. Okay, so that is one. Okay, so do we have male chauvinism at home? Yes, you have male chauvinism in me, right? I was a male chauvinist who said I will never ride a pillion to a woman when I was 10 years old, by the way. Okay, don't hold it against me. Okay, 10 years. But I was. And so each of us are is the limited answer for me. Do we have male chauvinists at home? Answer is yes. That doesn't mean you need to just tell him, hey, you're a male chauvinist, I'm not going to speak to you. No, speak to him, reason him, make him see that he was a male chauvinist, he was being stupid. That's okay. That's the third aspect of it. And the other aspect, I'm jumping onto the BWSSB example. That's exactly the problem, right? I mean, it's not about number of women. It's not about BWSSB having more women. Doesn't mean anything. It is about how inclusive that workplace is. And which is one of the biggest challenges globally we are facing, right? We are having for certain roles more women, and the median salary of women is lower than the median salary of men. Because men are believed to be breadwinners and women are believed to be people who are necessarily not needing the work. And this is believed, I use the word believed. And so consequently, the median women wage is lower than the median men wage, including in the IT sector. In fact, you will all be surprised that, I mean, we do annual surveys at NASSCOM, we found that median women wage is about 86% of the median men wage. And even after, in the IT sector, where same wage for same role is there. But that is because most women choose not to pursue certain roles which are considered to be direct line of revenue. So, and on and on and on. Okay, so that is the answer on BWSSB. The fact that we are asking, do we have a woman leader, is the point that we haven't reached that inclusive environment or inclusive nirvana. Between the two comes the next point that I heard is all about roles and its attribution to different set of people. And so if you have in a particular role more women, correct it. If you have more men in a particular role, correct it. And that will be my recommendation. Do you correct it internally? Do you correct it through working with the environment? It's a process that you need to follow.
This thing about salary or remuneration disparity, is it possible that it is, well, we're saying, I just recall, I mean, was thinking in something which always I've looked at as a women in farming, women in construction industry. I know there is definitely a difference in salary parity, men and women. When construction industry or in farming, a male labor would get definitely 30% more than a women labor. I always alluded that to the physical ability to deliver, and that is something is getting compensated in the difference in salary. Now, in an IT industry where there is significantly no difference, I'm just being quite brash. What would happen if women step away from the IT industry?
Okay, let me take that and then go back. Okay.
I'm just thinking I can tolerate women getting lower paid in a farm or a construction industry where there's a physical labor to be bought, and you can assume productivity is definitely reduced in a woman being on the role, and that is getting translated into a lower pay. But why would you do that in an IT industry where there's no difference between a male coding or a female coding?
Yeah, no, I need to go back and correct your understanding. What I said is median wage of women as a whole, as against the median wage of men, and that is purely because women drop off before they become leaders and they go off. That is one. Another aspect of it is they don't take up sales roles, not always.
So
they don't take up.
Eventually, saying the higher paid roles are invariably being held by men, and women either are dropping out and not reaching the higher positions. But I do recall in this question being there in Europe and even US. It's not like it's not just an Indian male are worse off than an European male or an American male. So I thought this was a universal problem. So I knew from NASSCOM, I want to know, what do you think of it?
Yeah, I think good thing about India is definitely ahead of the West from the whole STEM perspective, right? I mean, the STEM education in India has really seen more women thanks to the IT industry. So in general, Indian IT industry is considered to be a role model for women and their success, and especially the women successful leaders over the last 8 to 9 years. So honestly, I'm extremely proud of the journey from 2007 to 2024, irrespective of the fact that leadership positions have fewer women. We'll keep that into a separate conversation. So the fact that men and women could potentially have different wages because of the nature of the role they perform, right? And if the role that is being performed is that of number of kilograms of stone that is being lifted, it's quite possible that the male will earn more than the woman. But the point is that discrimination continues even when it becomes a supervisor or mestri, as they call it in Tamil in the construction industry. If the same woman becomes a mestri and a man becomes a mestri, woman gets a lower wage than the man, is where the problem starts. Okay, so if it is a task which requires physical labor and effort, that could be a discrimination. But with the amount of mechanization that is available, that discrimination also has no basis. So the skills is then what differentiates different wages between people. Skill continued investment in self, and all of that comes in, and which is where there is an action of having an inclusive workplace and not just about diversity. How do you make sure that you make sure somebody rotates across? Because if you have not been in sales, you may not be a very good business leader. And so you need to make sure that a woman is comfortable taking up a sales role and comes back. Is possible for a particular industry. So
Ravi,
it's
I
a
have a
conscious
very,
planning that is required.
coming on the same point, I mean, I'll just expand that further. And something which is now, women come with specific DNA characteristics, okay? And that is something is not going to be changed in terms of the emotional quotient or in terms of sympathy, which they may carry it on their sleeves, which may be a little exaggerated in a corporate world, but that's the way the women are, and not all of them can be dispassionate. Now, don't you think, answering your question, saying that roles changes, more men in roles where women are doing it, women are expected to deliver, and roles like more women take roles where predominantly it has been a male dominant roles. No, but I'm just challenging that question statement. I'm just asking Ravi, why would you not use the women in the best of their capabilities rather than trying to do something more than what they are otherwise comfortable doing or they're best at doing it? Why
Absolutely.
Why would you not amplify something rather than trying to rediscover yourself?
Okay, I'm going to delve this into two themes. Okay, first thing is I'm going to challenge this whole model of collectivism. Like, once you start saying a woman is good in, let us say, softer activities, caregiving activities, and things like that, and that is when you start looking at a woman who goes around in a motorcycle as non-woman. And on and on and on. What I'm actually trying to say is this whole collective view is actually the problem for our society not being inclusive. When I say our, I'm talking about globally. This whole collective, so the expectation that I can't cry because I'm a male is where there is a problem. And so, yes, it is true that women are more efficient in a few possible tasks. I don't even know that. But that doesn't mean that a woman who is not good at that particular task is going to be discriminated against. Once you start saying that a woman is good at knitting, a woman who is not good at knitting is going to be treated as an outcast. So it's very important for us to be careful in using all of these collectives and collective description, which is why the nirvana of an inclusive society is when you don't suddenly get up and see and notice a woman as a pilot. I'm going back to the same example. Till the day you notice that it is a woman, it becomes a problem. Like, take our country, right? I mean, our country has had minorities as the president, and the moment you start taking notice of it and talk about it, you're not an inclusive society. Nobody said Indira Gandhi was successful because she was a woman. No. Nobody said Indira Gandhi was successful because she had an ability to understand emotional quotient was better. Nobody described her in any form. If at all anything, she was told that she was arrogant. Yeah.
Otherwise.
Yeah, otherwise. Okay, so it's so important for us to be careful in all of these collective descriptions, collective expectations, and on and on.
That is now, again, I'm going back to this about the 20s and 30s coming into corporate world and the resistance they are going to face in women, I'm talking women getting into corporate world. And especially if they are coming into fields which are up till now, not being manned by women. Now, that is something which because that is something they've been trained, but the receiver other end is not yet ready to receive the service. Now, how do we handle that? How do we make this comfortable for them? They can get trained, but they are not yet welcome in a corporate world.
Oh, sometimes it is training, sometimes it is education, sometimes it is regulation. Why do we need a regulation which says 30% of the boards of a listed company need to be women? Because if you didn't do it you will wait for another 200 years and you will not have women in the board. And in fact, to give you an example, I did a workshop in Institute of Company Secretaries in Bangalore, where I was talking about women on the boards and all of that. And back came a question saying, don't you think that this regulation will ensure that people put their wives and daughters into the board? I said, you never asked this question when the sons and the husbands came into the board. Did you? You didn't. And today you want to ask that question? Imagine and understand the fallacy of that question, please. We have no problems in Anil Ambani or Mukesh Ambani getting onto the board, being a child of Dhirubhai. Both of them are brilliant people, but at the same time, when it becomes a daughter, you start asking a question, is it? So imagine the fallacy of your question was my response. So sometimes you have to bulldoze. And you do that for a finite period, and then it becomes a steroid. All that I spoke earlier comes back into question.
And this is where a couple of role models in the organization or leaders in the organization who could probably take a very defense stand against the common accepted organization philosophy and take that so-called risk in accepting and encouraging women or encouraging a differentiated talent into the organization. Which is
forget organizations, Subhashi. Forget organization. At home, we should support our children to choose non-standard occupations or non-stereotypical occupation.
I see Govind Nayagam made one statement about how he has never been to a baby care center, but while his son is doing it for his child and is also supporting his daughter-in-law in the kitchen. So that is something like a surprise, but I think that is a norm going forward. That should have been the norm even earlier, which probably a generation did not participate in that.
No, and at least he is lucky that that was possible. And in most organizations, it is prohibited. In most societies, it is prohibited by law. You can't be a caregiver in a school.
You would mention about schools.
There are schools which prohibit men from being, thankfully, men can be teachers, but they can't be caregivers. So what I'm actually trying to say is this whole societal outlook works as much against men as women. That's essentially the summarization I wanted to do.
And I think, as you said, school, it's something that just strikes me that your training should actually start with the schools and with the teachers in the schools, not just the students in the schools. Actually, it strikes me that teachers, because there are invariably like nurses, there are more women teachers than lady teachers than men. And probably they are to be the first one to be starting this parity issue or acceptance. I would even call it an acceptance and a willing acceptance, not a resisting the acceptance or not being very diffident about it. I think we need to be more willing to accept it, and probably teachers are the best source of training probably. Because more than homes, where child spends probably more hours, waking hours at school than at home. And you probably spend that training with the teachers, you're probably much of your work is done, or the task is done, if you may call it. Interesting.
On a very serious note, Subhashi, if there is a law which says 30% of primary school teachers are men, I'm telling you, teachers' wages will go up. Because For a man, you think you'll need to pay good enough to be a wage earner. Whereas for a woman teacher, you treat her poorer than an ayah, and pay her less than an ayah. Sorry, if people don't follow ayah, it is the housekeeper or a maid. So what I'm actually saying is diversity helps society as a whole. It's not about helping women. No, it is not. And if you are having a place full of women, you're doing disservice to women.
Very interesting, because when I started off my career, one of my early days, somebody who could come home as a guest and was similar qualification as mine, and seeing me working, he was actually being in my household, not that I had gone to his house. In my house, with my family being around, very accusately he made them say that you people are stealing away the jobs of us.
Yeah.
So it was a very vivid statement still etched in my mind that he said, you are stealing away. I said, I'm not stealing anything, but I've earned this job with my qualification. It was not that I'm so-and-so's child by birth, but it's just the job which I have secured. But I think that was a bias at that point in time, the equal pay. So what you're saying is male teachers will probably have the pay structures will change because they'll start believing teachers are earning. They're working because they have to earn and not because they're coming here to spend their time.
Yeah, yeah.
They will be treated as an equally an able workforce which needs to be compensated for the work they deliver, and not gratis which is being given right now.
Yeah.
Very interesting, very interesting.
We
Bhavani,
need to delve deeper into these topics, but one of the most important themes over here that I wanted to leave the audience with is each of us remain with biases. So never ever only say that the other person is biased. We all are biased. The second important thing is, if somebody says something unacceptable, at least the first time correct him in private. And the reason for that is, otherwise you're going to only reinforce his belief system. Because he's going to resist, he's going to deny, he's going to, I didn't mean that, I didn't say that. And then it just is going to be an antagonism. The third and the most important is, inclusion is not a nice thing. Inclusion is not a nice thing. It is the only right thing.
I can't
And the
agree more.
only right thing is for the whole society. It is not the right thing for the women, it is the right thing for the society. It is the right thing for the men. It is the right thing for anyone with any sexual preference or orientation or upbringing. And at the day when we forget about these collective descriptions, we'll be a great society.
I totally agree, Ravi. I think I recall when you mentioned last when we were speaking, and I think it resonates so well to me as well, is about the unconscious bias. I think I acknowledge and accept that all of us have it, and I have it more than anyone. Is when you said, if for my son to get married, I look at his ability to support a family with his earning capability. When my daughter is getting married, I don't think of that as a requirement. That is, I don't see that she is to be ready to support a family. I think she's just by age, she's entitled to get married. Where my son by age is not entitled to get married. He's only entitled to get married only when he is earning enough to support a family. I think this is a bias which I think all of us, it's something I acknowledge it. I think you made my eyes open. I think later on I should think about it differently. So I leave it with that. Is there any, if there are any questions you would want to ask, I think they can open out the mute.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to, if anyone to ask questions to Ravi, please do so. You can put it in the chat box, or you can raise your hands. We could get you into the speaker podium and you can get to speak, please. Madhuri? And anyone need to?
I think, Shubhasree, we'll have time for a maximum of 2 questions, considering that.
I am more than happy.
Yeah.
Are there anyone who would want to ask specific questions to Ravi on this topic? I'm sure there's a lot we discussed during this last 1.5 hours. Multiple points, multiple issues.
Yeah, I think one comment I saw in the chat box is the need for initiatives that should be implemented to support and promote women's entrepreneurship and economic independence, because that gives a lot of, so that I am seeing as a one question. Probably Mr. Ravi can throw some
Yeah.
light on that. We are talking about people rising in the career, reaching high positions. What should we do? Because the economic independence at the end of the day matters a lot when we talk about the gender and things like that.
That's an excellent question, and I have a very simple answer here. Okay, and the fact that entrepreneurship is a risky structure by itself, right? By definition, entrepreneurship is risky, and it is very important for the society as a whole to not put the burden on the entrepreneur to prove that he or she has a passion in that particular activity. So there are a lot of people who get into entrepreneurship and saying, hey, I'll make money. And I don't think any of them make money. But people who have a great idea, pursue it and succeed. And so the success of women entrepreneurship comes from role models again. Today we have many successful women entrepreneurs, we will be successful. But you can't always wait for that. So what is a steroid would be the next question. And the steroids are an enabling environment. A lot of big corporates have women entrepreneurs as an affirmative action group with whom they contract with. And once again, of course, I know that if any of you want to get into entrepreneurship, go to Avatar, they will tell you which all companies have a program for women executives, women entrepreneurs, partnerships, and things like that. Finance and capital, I think capital is aplenty as long as you have passion. The biggest problem is people want capital because they don't want to take their own risk. And that is true for men as much as for women. So capital is not where I am coming from. I'm not talking about MSME funding. I'm only clearly here talking about have a passion, go to Avatar, they will tell you how to reach the large companies as their vendors.
Can I just
Yes.
ask 2 points to seek the views of Mr. Ravi, because my name is also Mr. Ravi. So names.
Yes, Ravi.
One is when we talk of there should be role model every time we are emphasizing on that particular aspect. By saying we should have a role model, are we not putting a block on the internal creative thought process of every individual? Because you get yourself imbibed into that role model, what he does, and whether he does it rightly or wrongly, you follow their footsteps. And your originality gets a big hit because of that. So under that context, how this role model will really help us? That is question number 1. I have only 2 questions. Second question, considering the general awareness that is there among the youngsters about sharing the burden in everything, because both of them are contributing, be it a man or be it a boy or be it a girl, everyone knows. So if I come late, you do the rest. When you come early, I will do the other thing. So the sharing concept, the understanding is there. And you can see the assertness with which more particularly both men and women particularly more in number. That is, if you see the statistics, there is a great delay in their getting married itself because they are not able to get that understanding, compatibility being agreed to between the partners. What will be your
Brilliant. Thanks, Dr. Ravi. If I take your second point first, okay. I think sharing, being equal at home, not just speaking about equality, but living equality is the only way forward. And that's why I keep saying it is about home and living equal. And that is why I always keep saying we need role models at home. Okay, now I'm flipping to the first question is, you're absolutely right about role model. And I keep telling this, if you take Naren Murthy was successful in building Infosys. But if he tries to build another Infosys, it won't be as successful. He has to build something else, and that can be successful. Same thing applies. So if I try to follow somebody, I can never be a leader, and all of us need to be leaders. And so from that perspective, the role models only tells people what is possible. If I try to be a Subhashri, I will never be successful. And if I try to be a Dr. Ravi, I will never be successful. And I should never be at all. Because each of us are unique and each of us are successful for who we are. Is essentially how it is. So the role models are important to show what is possible, not what you need to be. Otherwise, everyone wants to be a Dhoni, right? I mean, or everyone wants to be whoever else. That's not a great way the world to live in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we are run out of time. Ravi, that was very, very, very interesting speaking to you. I think maybe I'm less agitated than I was at the beginning of the session. I've always been a one to saying that why can't we have a better day under the sun? I think now as I said at the beginning of the Stockholm Syndrome, probably yes, the men need a little bit of patient communication from the women, and we women are not necessarily known to be patient, especially when we are talking to our partners. So this probably is extending, the Partners in Progress is also extending when we do the communication with our male colleagues. So we need to be a little more patient and a little more communicative about our where we are coming from and why we are asking what is our demand, and clarify our position, and not take it, expect that it should be given to us automatically, or feel guilty or feel rejected that it is not being given to us automatically. It is, we continue to fight, or the fight in a very elegant way, not in a very rebellious way, but very elegant way, continue the communication with our partners. I think we'll probably, the next generation and a few generations from now, this will not be a topic at all. Probably they'll be discussing something else more interesting. Thank you, Ravi.
Thank you all. Thanks for the audience.
Let me invite Madhuri to say a few words, close the thing.
Thank you. Thank you very much, madam. Well, what a wonderful last 1.5 hours. I don't think the time is enough for us to, probably we can even do a half-a-day session on this. Just wanted to understand, this is the first year in which I've heard about International Men's Day. Honestly, it's maybe I haven't applied my mind on that. So, and then I did some research and then found that International Men's Day is to celebrate the positive contribution of men to the society and to highlight the importance of their well-being. So when I did a furthermore research to understand when it all started, it was first declared in 1992 by Thomas Otter to raise awareness about the issue men face. So it was revived again in 1999 by Dr. Jerome Tilak Singh in Trinidad and Tobago, and the date goes. And when I went back to check when was International Women's Day started, it started somewhere in 1800s. Like I have different dates, Kavi. 1857, 1909, 1911. Sorry. So it's almost after 95 years later. We have the International Men's Day. I think it's one of these first sessions which WBC, as we are WBC, we are very happy to have curated this and have a very thoughtful discussion and mind-provoking discussion on that. Sir, your key points of takeaway, you should first create a space in mind regarding inclusiveness. And also the strong statements, there are a lot of phrases that was very, very, apt and catchy that, inclusion cannot happen by exclusion. You need an inclusive workplace needed rather than a diverse workplace. You also stressed on a very important point that inclusivity starts from home and then should follow in colleges and schools, which also manifest in workplace, create an environment for inclusivity. So, and also we need to understand our own biases and work in the natural and unconscious bias. And of course, you did give your prescription apart from not just prescribing steroids, but you also gave us a prescription of, let me say, a short term of antibiotic medicines and also a long term of vitamins and minerals for us to take it forward as to how you should have role models, do not attribute success to a particular gender and so on and so forth. I'm sure all the participants, the start of a week have a lot of food for thought when they want to take away for this to the entire week and probably, back home also. So I would personally thank Ms. Subhashree for
We lost.
We lost you, Madhuri.
So
I
I
think-
think we are running out of time. I think everybody's time is, we should be mindful of it.
so
Thank
that
you.
is there.
Thank you.
Madhuri,
Thank
you
you.
come back? I can't.
Madhuri, are you back?
Oh yeah, I don't know that I was lost. When
Yeah,
was I
you were lost. You were lost. We didn't hear the last
So,
portion. We heard till the
okay.
prescription.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. The prescription and antibiotics and other things. So I was just wrapping up. So I would like to thank Subhashree for curating everything and Mr. Ravi for spending his time on behalf of Chairperson Ms. Bhavani, on behalf of Saraswati and all the Madras Chamber members. We extend a heartfelt thanks to everybody for participating in this. Special thanks to I think around 100 odd participants. You would have around 65, 70 online and some of them viewing YouTube as well. So thank you all for participating. Wishing you all a wonderful week and a happy International Men's Day to all the men in the group. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madhuri.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks that
Thank
we
you,
didn't.
Madhuri.
Thank you that we didn't choose to wait for 95 years to
you.
start this. Thank you.
So much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you
Thank
all.
Thank you.
Thanks.